and welcome to Whether or Not. Today we're going to be talking about the not part of the title there. We're going to be talking about earthquakes today because we've seen some rather prominent news stories recently about earthquakes striking areas such as Japan and Mexico. So first of all, we're going to talk about what causes an earthquake. Well, this picture, of course, is fictional, but let's take a look at what really does cause these earthquakes around the world. So first of all, we have to talk about plate tectonics. Now, first of all, we're going to take a look at what these plates mean. Now, most continents and around the world under sea, we see tectonic plates. That's basically the upper crust of the Earth, and these are in motion. In fact, these do move up to 5 to 10 centimeters a year, depending on where you are, and they all move in different directions. So where these plates meet and where they depart from one another, we get seismic activity in the form of earthquakes. In fact, take a look at this. So if we take a look, first of all, at those tectonic plates, we can see their motion. So the South American plate is currently moving north. The African plate is moving towards the northeasterly direction. So they're actually moving away from each other. And as you can see here, up to 10 centimeters a year, which, of course, as we progress through years, is going to make quite a difference. So, yes, the surface of the Earth is, in fact, in motion. Now, where these plates meet is where we see the seismic and tectonic activities. These tectonic plates, as you'll see, very closely resemble most of the earthquakes that we see over the past 10 or 20 years or so. We can see that on our drawn-out map today, with the red dots being seismic events, which is, of course, the form of earthquakes. So earthquakes do generally follow the outlines of these tectonic plates, and as a result, we can say definitively that this is where earthquakes are formed. Now, what happens in an earthquake exactly? Well, plate movement suddenly releases a massive amount of energy. As these plates move either away from, next to, or towards each other, they build up massive amounts of friction, and this friction is all released in a very, very sudden, short period of time. Now, what that causes is a massive amount of energy released in the form of waves. Those waves are why we feel the shaking. So that's in fact what an earthquake is. It's waves emanating out of an epicenter or a hypercenter, in this case, which is underneath the ground and can be hundreds of kilometers underneath the ground, or it can be a very, very shallow eruption, and that causes these waves. We have a few different types of waves. We have waves that move along the y-axis, of course, up and down. We have waves that move along an x-axis, left and right, and then we have compression waves as well. And as you can see in this illustration over here, we can see that the ground actually compresses and then releases over and over again. This is what causes our damage. So basically, we get different types of tectonic motions. The first type of tectonic motion is divergent motion, where two plates are moving away from each other, and this can cause rather heavy ground damage. This is where you start to see massive holes opening up in the Earth. This is where you start to see big trenches opening up, hundreds of kilometers long. We get convergent movement, which is when two plates move against each other, and one is forced up and one is forced below the other one. And of course, that causes massive friction, and this is where we get some of the largest earthquakes in the world. And then we get lateral motion, where two plates are moving alongside each other. And this, of course, also causes massive movement, massive friction, and a massive release of energy as well. We measure this all by using something called a seismograph. Now, a lot of people will have seen something that looks like this, registers the amplitude of the waves which are emitted from that epicenter or that hypercenter. And this is, of course, recorded onto a piece of paper, and that is then used to record the strength of the event. So it's an amplitude that's recorded by the release of energy. The amplitude is the distance between the low and the high points of the wave, so a crest and a trough. So how large is that wave from top to bottom there? And the larger the wave, the more powerful the quake. We measure this quake, of course, using the Richter Scale, which basically uses an algorithm which sees that amplitude transferred into the power, basically, something that we can understand as the power of that earthquake. And you can see here what we record them in. Very small earthquakes are anything on a Richter scale registering 1 to 3. Each time you move up by 1 point, the next point is 10 times stronger than the previous point. So it's actually an exponential increase. So you go from a small quake at a 3 that is very, very small and you hardly feel it, up to a 4, which is moderate to sudden and causes a fair amount of damage, cracks in walls, plates falling over, things like that, all the way through by the time you reach 7 to a very strong and sudden release of energy, which of course is damaging buildings. It's causing death and of course loss of life there. So the logarithm that records the amplitude then by the seismographs translates it into a Richter scale, and then we can see between 1 and 10 the strength of these. And now these can be rather high. If we take a look at some of the highest or rather most powerful earthquakes to ever be recorded in the world, this is what we see. 57 years ago, a magnitude 9.6 quake, which struck off the coast of Chile. So just along the coast of Chile there, Chile in fact sitting on one of the more actively moving tectonic plates. And again, this is why we see such strong movement and such strong tectonic activity in Chile. Chile, in fact, holds 3 of the most powerful quakes ever recorded, so a disproportionate amount of earthquakes in the area. And the tectonic plate movement through this entire area, well, this is where all 10 of the top 10 most powerful quakes have happened. So referred to by some as the Ring of Fire due to the amount of tectonic activity in the area. They also occur very, very frequently. Now, this was a record of the most frequent activity, tectonic activity over the last, well, you can see only 10 hours. We've recorded 10 quakes there. Several of the quakes are felt and above a 5 magnitude, 3 of them being above a 5 magnitude, which is possibly causing damage to areas. So we can see this is a very, very prominent topic now. 10 quakes in the last 10 hours from when that photograph was recorded on the 29th of September. Now, this is some of the damage which can be caused by an earthquake, and in this case we see a magnitude 6.9 in Kobe, Japan, where we saw the amplitude of the earthquake actually destroying the foundations of the bridge structure. Of course, resulted in massive loss of life. So you can just imagine anything above a 6.9 is really, really a devastating quake. That's where we're going to leave your whether or not for today. So I hope you feel a little bit more educated on the topic of earthquakes, and remember to tune in every Friday at about 4:45 for whether or not.